Hi, I'm Darren Priday, manager of the Sir Michael Beetham Conservation Centre at the Royal Air Force Museum Cosford. The MBCC here was opened in 2002 by Sir Michael Beetham, and it's where we care, conserve and do the engineering for the large 3D objects. By large 3D I mean things like planes, engines, boats, vehicles, missiles, anything large, big, mechanical. Here we have the Handley Page Hampden TB1, one of the museum's long-term restoration projects. Made huge progress in the last 5 years. Just to talk a little bit about its history, it was involved in the protection of the Arctic convoys and was shot down on the night of the 5th of September 1942. 5 crew on board, sadly 3 were killed. 2 behind me, Robertson and Garrity, were lost during the air battle. The Canadian, Miller, who was inside here, was killed when the aircraft crash landed. At the moment we're sort of concentrating more on the fuselage. No real progress on the wings at this time. Don't really know when we're going to start them. My team's looking at just finishing off what we can with the fuselage. One other little project that's going on at the same time, things like the light fittings that you can see here, the original ones inside. We're getting a low wattage LED system inside, so when she does go on public display, be able to flick a switch and light her up inside as well. That'll enhance the visitor's experience of looking at the aeroplane. And another thing they're looking at potentially doing when she goes on display as well is where the forward fuselage and the rear fuselage join. It's just to remove the one bolt here, and that'll allow the 2 sections to be moved apart. Then the public will be able to go through the gap here, normal 6 foot, 8 foot sort of gap, and that'll allow them to look where the pilot sat, where Robertson, Garrity would have been sat as well, and give an overall impression what it would have been like to be involved in flying or working on a Handley Page Hampden during the war. One thing that does stick out is how narrow the aeroplane is. 3 foot 36 inches external to external, so she's incredibly narrow. But again, a lot of people flew in these airplanes, and sadly obviously quite a lot lost their lives as well. When the Handley Page Hampden first came out, it was advertised by Handley Page as a fighter bomber, because at that time, mid-30s, most of the fighter aircraft then were biplanes, so probably a good statement to make. But very quickly at that time as well, the 109s and the Spitfires were being invented, so it lost the fighter bit very, very quickly. One thing they did find then, down the beam, so that's from wingtip to wingtip, the Handley Page Hampden wasn't very well protected. So one of the early modifications was this square that you can see above me here. The bottom bit is a cam, so when the gun was put into the position, it wouldn't actually shoot its own propeller in an engine. But again, there was a little bit of flaw when you look into it. Again, aircraft only being 3 foot wide, you'd have a hot gun. So if you were to attack from one side and you were firing with the gun, airplane turned, come from the other side, you'd have to lift a heavy gun that would be hot, throw it out into the airflow, try and connect it into its fitting so you didn't shoot your own engine and propeller, and then carry on firing. I can imagine not a lot of people would have done that, but they certainly had the option. Here we are in the nose section of the Hampden, and the bomb aimer navigator would have been down here, and he's actually got a little bench top or desktop that he can work from. He has duplication of some of the pilot's instruments up here. That allows him then to put all his information into his bomb sights, gives him his information then for the drift recorders, and again slightly lower down as well another instrument that the pilot would have, which is a compass. Mentioned earlier as well about the lighting, and it's these sort of lights that you can see here above the compass. Another very important thing we get involved with in the MBCC is meeting the families or the veterans, if they're still around, that used to fly the objects that we've got in here. And over the years we've met many people that have been involved with the Hampden. Met a couple of pilots through 30 ops, one gentleman who flew 62 ops and visited every major German city. Great to meet these people. Most of them now are in the late 90s. One of them I've met has been even over 100. And only last week we had a family come in whose relation was a pilot on the same detachment that this aircraft was shot down on. They'd seen plenty of photos and books of Hampden, but never seen the object. 8 of them came in, finally got to see where their war hero was seated, which is up above me. And here we have the Westland Lysander, which was on public display down at Hampden. Was brought up to Cosford around about 12 months or so ago. When we've got a project like this, the first thing we look at is doing as minimum as we can, really. What we gave this one was a really good clean. From being on display for a long time, we get a lot of dust, museum bits and pieces hanging around on it, and so we just really give it a good clean up. Little things like this here, which are original objects, some of them were impregnated with a lot of oil and gone quite hard, so we're just trying to soften them up so they're like the rest of them now. And other things that we look at doing as well, if there's a mechanical system on an aeroplane, is to reinstate it and see if we can get it back operating. We've got the cooling gills at the back of the engine here, and as you can see, it's a selection that the pilot could have done when he was flying, and the gills will open up again now. So just like attention to detail. Another part of the MBCC not a lot of people get to see is our surface finish shop. Carry out all the painting, and a skill that's not a lot of people in the country have got actually is fabric work. This is an example of a piece of Irish linen. As you can see, you can just fold it up. I suppose it's just like one of your t-shirts really. When the technician gets to do the work, he attaches it to the airframe. This is a wing of a Lysander. As you can see, gets on here, stitched on. Sometimes they get stapled on or screwed on. Then the coats of dope get applied, and it goes very, very taut. And so it takes about 4 coats to get to, from what we saw before, to that sort of tension. Other coats you get microwave radiation protection layers put on, and then on top of that then you get the final surface finish. A couple of other little bits of interest on top of the wing once it's been fabriced. Down the centre here, what you can probably just about make out is the connection. There's little staples or pins, and a wire goes through. Other ways you can tie it on, but this little strip of fabric here with the pinked edge is to protect the joint. And also as well, on top of the wing you can see here we've got some panels, and these are inspection panels, so the technicians can have a little look at the aeroplane, make sure everything looks okay with the controls and things like that. Here we have a Vickers Wellington. This is the T10 model. Around about 11,500 Wellingtons were manufactured, and they were the only bomber that was on Bomber Command from the start to the end of the war. This one here came up to the MBCC around about 8-9 years ago. She was on display at Hampden, but a lot of the fabric work started to deteriorate, dry out, started to crack. So that's when we were asked to step in, get her up here and do a restoration program on her. We're having a good look over her, but the main object of our task really is to replace the fabric. With the original fabric removed from the aeroplane, what you can see here is some insulation. This isn't actually fabric, and some sort of protection for the pilot. This is on the line of the propeller, so possibly if ice was to come off the tips or something like that, then when they were flying, it would give him a lot of protection. It's not particularly thick though. It's quite interesting, the design behind that. But also again, as you can see inside, say nothing there, gives you a good view inside. You can see the hydraulic systems, electrical systems, all the pipe work for his flying controls, pedostatic, this sort of stuff. Gives you an indication what a modern day aircraft would look like, but I can imagine there would be tenfold the amount of equipment inside a modern day aeroplane. What the Wellington is most famous for is the geodetic structure that we can see here, and probably the easiest way to explain it is to think of an airship coming into the fixed wing world, all based on really a diamond, as you can see here, and they could take a lot of impact, a lot of damage when they were flying. So if say this section here got damaged, there's another diamond going around it, here you've got a bigger diamond, and that's how the structure on these aeroplanes used to survive, and you can see them limping back with huge big holes in the side, things like that. All the MBCC work is object related, but it's also support of the objects in the task that we're doing here. And the framework here that you can see the Wellington is sat on was manufactured by the MBCC metal worker. Huge big support frame in 2 pieces. They're bespoke really to be able to move a Wellington around. To take this outside to industry would have cost thousands, but again this is something we can make in-house.